Today's guest is Shawn Heilbron, the Director of Athletics at Stony Brook University. The show is sponsored by the School of Communication and Journalism and the Center for Excellence in Learning and Teaching. Our purpose is to start a countdown to our hopeful return to normalcy following this past year's pandemic. We'd like to lead you into the fall with a weekly update on how we feel, look, and think about tomorrow. I'm Melanie Formosa, your host. Thank you for joining me, Shawn.
Thank you, Melanie. It's great to be here and great to talk to you.
What is your role here on campus?
So I'm the Director of Athletics. I've been here 7 years on July 1, so it's been a great ride and really just manage the overall athletic department. And my role is really to ensure our student athletes are successful in the classroom, on the field, and really have an incredible experience here at Stony Brook. How
did you get involved in athletics?
It's something that I've always been passionate about. When I grew up, I think like so many kids that love sports, the goal is to be a professional football player, or baseball player, and then as you get older, you realize that's probably not attainable. So for me, it was, how can I stay involved in sports? And honestly, the first thought was to be a broadcaster.
Really?
That was what I studied at the University of Texas, and then when I graduated, realized that I wanted to actually work in sports rather than cover or broadcast. So I got an opportunity with a minor league hockey team, an unpaid internship in Dallas, where I'm from, and the rest is history.
That's unbelievable. So this was going to be your job, was behind the mic, right?
That was the thought, and that was the goal and the dream, and dreams and thoughts change, and this one certainly did it, and it definitely worked out.
Touching, I believe, is a huge part of sports. When people score, a goal,
yes. Everyone
fist bumps, hugs, cheers. How has COVID affected that aspect?
It's really interesting. So much of what I think everyone experienced was that distancing. But in sports, you're right. There's so much physical contact, but there's also the time in the locker room. So for our athletes, a lot of them didn't even get to use their locker room spaces due to distancing. And I think because of the testing that we did, and really basketball was the first sport to come through, they were tested 3 times per week. And, they started to find a sense of normalcy within their bubble. So they would do the fist bumps and hug and touch and those sorts of things. But it really was complicated. Do you shake a hand? And handshaking is such a big part of sports, and that went away. And I think it was hard for student athletes and coaches, and really for us, to know what to do. What do people feel comfortable with? And ultimately, it started to normalize a little bit as we came through the spring. But it was very awkward and clunky, I think, as we first got into it, because people just didn't know what to do.
What do you think the psychological impact of that is for the players themselves?
I think it was really hard. For students in general, this was a difficult year. Just having the restrictions, having the guidelines, and for student athletes in particular, just because that's the world I live in, it was difficult. Not to be able to see family, not to be able to socialize due to the testing requirements, and their desire to continue practicing and competing, and then getting into it with no fans. That was really hard too. So I worried very much about the mental health of our student athletes and the emotional toll. And we tried very hard to give them a normal experience under the circumstances. And as much as we tried, it was still really challenging for them, particularly when no students were on campus, which our basketball athletes were here, over Christmas, really past Thanksgiving, when no one was here. So it was hard.
Fans can be very polarized, I've seen. And especially this past year, I guess year and a half now, we've had a lot of polarization in society. How has that come into those bleachers?
It's such an incredible phenomenon, really, because we rely so much on our fans to provide energy and support our student athletes, and but they can have their own expectations and have their own thoughts, and we want to be in a place where we're all supporting each other, but the reality is it's hard when you're in a physical space. We've seen so many actions, particularly at the professional level, of fans, whether it's throwing popcorn at Russell Westbrook, from the Washington Wizards coming off of the court, a lot of fans crossing the line. I think within the college athletic space, we have a more, I would say, understanding environment, but it's still it's there are heightened expectations, and they're very passionate fans in college athletics. So it's something that I think we'll continue to see more of, and certainly the rise of social media has created an environment where it's easy to criticize an 18 to 22-year-old, which I think it's horribly inappropriate and irresponsible, but that's the world we live in.
Speaking of social media, can you talk a little bit about taking a knee and what would happen if one of your students, did take a knee?
Yeah, Melanie, it was something actually back in 2016 when Colin Kaepernick took a knee that we talked about it with our student athletes, and I was open to having conversations back then and wanting to have dialogue, and I don't think our student athletes were quite comfortable having that conversation. And then we fast forward to the summer of 2020 and the murder of George Floyd. I think it changed that dramatically. So we knew that having these conversations had to happen. And so we had those with our teams throughout the summer. We opened the channels of communications with our student athletes and really wanted to support them any way possible. So our women's basketball team, many of them chose to take a knee for the anthem during the season, and I supported that. I support our student athletes to express themselves. I do think it's important that we respect everyone's opinion, everyone's position. We had some athletes from our women's team that did not take a knee, and I think there was a shared respect for one another, and that to me is so important, because we get into this polarization, which you mentioned earlier, that can really tear apart, and we're here to unite and bring people together. So I think understanding why people feel the way that they do, and then allowing them to express themselves in a manner that is consistent with that expression and supportive of the message that they're trying to convey.
I applaud you for that respect, because it puts you in an iffy situation as the director.
It does.
Right?
It does. And part of my job is to allow student athletes the opportunity to express themselves and to grow personally, because they're here 4 to 5 years, but really our job is to help shape them and give them a chance to come out stronger and more prepared for the world outside of Stony Brook. And part of it is I want to listen. I want to engage in conversation. I want to educate and inform. So rather than just an athlete saying, I'm going to take a knee because I saw an athlete do it, I want them to really understand why they're doing it, or whatever the expression is, and why it's important to them. And for so many of our athletes, it was very personal and very important. And I think that's one of my key responsibilities, is to listen and to empower our student athletes.
Hasn't it happened before that donors don't like the taking a knee, and then they pull out, and then, the director is their job is jeopardized?
Yeah, no, it's a very again, it's a touchy subject, and certainly I've spoken with colleagues across the country and seen instances where supporters at certain institutions did not take kindly to that expression, and I think it's hard, because it's understanding again what is the protest about, what is the expression about, and sometimes that can be misconstrued. And again, it's educating each other on what we're trying to achieve here, what message we're trying to send. But for some, it's just it's not acceptable under any circumstances. And fortunately, we have a very supportive administration and leadership team here that allows our student athletes and allows our students to express themselves in a respectful manner that is meaningful to them.
I want this podcast also to apply to people who don't like sports, because I've come across many. They don't like watching, they don't like playing, they just don't like it whatsoever. But what is the role that sports plays that's more than just, the touchdown?
It's a great question. I would say I answered that broadly first, and then I'll narrow it. I think at Stony Brook, our role is to shine the spotlight on the university. It's to market the university. It's to be a brand ambassador. Again, you don't have to like sports, as you said, but I think understanding our role, which if we're playing a game on the West Coast, or if we win a big game, it is about Stony Brook University and the academic offerings and the incredible research and the hospital and all the wonderful aspects of this great institution. So that's first and foremost. And then we're here to shape leaders. I think for a lot of our athletes, they come in as a football player or a soccer player, but I want them to expand their identities beyond that and express themselves and understand there's more to life than their sport. And, so many of them have gotten involved in other areas of campus, but I think the leadership lessons that are taught through sports, through participation, it's indescribable. And I think it does help so much to shape future leaders and really teach incredible lessons that, yes, while there are other areas of life that you can gain knowledge and wisdom, sports are an incredible vehicle to that. And I've seen the tremendous growth of student athletes through their participation, but also find other things that are of interest to them, and they go on to have their horizons expanded in ways they never would have thought possible.
I so agree with that, separating the person from the sport. A lot of people, bring that on as their identity, and they're more than that.
Absolutely.
I'm a runner, but I'm not a runner. I run, but I do other things.
Yes.
So that's really important to remember.
Yeah, and part of it is because when you sports, it's you either make the shot or you don't make the shot. And so your success or failure should not be defined by what you do solely in athletics. That's just unfair, and it's not realistic.
Can you go a little more in depth with that? Because I've thought about that, the psychological toll of scoring that goal or not, and then the embarrassment of not only all the fans, but all of your teammates. How does that impact students?
There's incredible pressure on these young women and men, and this is why you see mental health issues with. You certainly see it at this age, regardless. College is stressful enough, but when you're trying to perform in front of a lot of people, there's added pressure there, and then there's parental pressure, family pressure, the pressure of the fans, and it really can weigh heavily, and I worry about that tremendously. So, it's really key that we nurture those other aspects of our student athletes' lives. And when I talk to our athletes, sure, I'll talk to them about, how's practice or how's the team doing, but I also talk to them about their family, their life, their interests outside of sports, because they need to understand that to us, they're more than just an athlete. They really are student athletes, but they're young women and men who have so much more than just their athletic ability. So it's something that I think about a lot, because there's so much stress, and again, with social media, their successes and failures are out there for all to see, and it's a small slice of who they are. It's an important slice, but it's not everything.
No, it's not everything. It's not everything. Have you seen grades go down because of the time that sports takes up?
Absolutely. We have an incredible academic support system within the athletic department, but the time demands that are placed on these athletes are tremendous. And between practice and competition and travel and all the other aspects of their lives, it's a lot. So they have to be disciplined, which is why we have services solely for them. But certainly when you're in the midst of your season, you've got to dedicate the time. You've got to put in the effort. You miss classes due to travel, so it certainly can take a toll on your grades, and that's why we place such an emphasis on providing the resources year-round, but especially during the season, so that they don't fall behind and they can actually succeed academically.
For those who don't know, how do you join? And how do you become, or is it even joining? How do you become a student athlete?
It's interesting, because I get asked all the time how, it's either just random, high school athletes or parents. Our coaches do the recruiting, so I get asked a lot, do you recruit? And I don't. I meet with recruits when our coaches ask me to, but our coaches really are responsible for identifying prospective student athletes, and so much goes into that. It's sure, you're trying to get a talented athlete, but you're also trying to get an academically oriented student, because Stony Brook is not an easy institution, so who can handle the workload? From a character standpoint, is this going to be a positive influence on our team? But really, our coaches, they go out, they scout, they watch videos, and interestingly enough, over the time of COVID, they were not able to go recruit in person, so there were Zoom interviews, they were watching film. They didn't get a chance, in many cases, to meet student athletes they recruited until they showed up at Stony Brook. But it's a meticulous process, but our coaches, they really... they leave no stone unturned in trying to identify the best and brightest to come join our program.
So you don't only work with coaches, but you work with students too. You have a very broad scope, it seems.
I do. I think, I manage the coaches and staff are employees, and our student athletes, though, they're our family. That's, as a the AD, I feel like a parent entrusts us with their child. And so for these 460 student athletes who we have, I take that responsibility very seriously to care for them, to look after them, to make sure that they feel loved, they feel valued, they feel respected. And when they struggle, when they make mistakes, that we're there to support them. And sometimes we have to discipline them, but it is a family, and it's one of those things that if the family has issues, then we need to address them. But by and large, we all believe in what we're doing here. We believe in building the Stony Brook brand, and that's what ultimately allows us to thrive and move forward together.
What happens if a student athlete gets injured?
So injuries happen all the time in sports, and again, we have a very, very good medical staff of athletic trainers and then doctors. And another benefit of being at Stony Brook is our relationship with the hospital. And you hope that injuries are more sprained ankles and minor, but we do have serious injuries from time to time. But we have an outstanding athletic training staff and an incredible medical team that supports our student athletes, and then not only treats the injury, but then helps bring them back through rehabilitation and just strength and conditioning. And it's really a team effort.
This podcast is forward-looking, so I want to hear your thoughts on the fall. And when we do come back, do you think there's going to be an eruption of athletics and sportsmanship and just overall cheer?
I love forward looking, so that's great for me. I do. I think this this campus and this country, I would say, is just begging for it. And college athletics is all about the pageantry. It's about the students. It's about celebrating the university. And I would think that everybody is going to be excited to come back together. And it's not just celebrating the football team or the basketball team. It's about celebrating this university and re-engaging in an event that gives such campus pride and spirit that we've been, quite honestly, missing over the past 15 months. So I can't wait. Our band is we have just the best band in the country, and I've missed them tremendously. I get chills just thinking about it. So I cannot wait, and I really am excited for our students to come back and celebrate with us and go back on this journey together.
I want to talk a little bit about the marching band because they deserve it.
They do. Oh, they're incredible.
Yeah, they come to every game and support.
They do. This band, and I've been at other schools, larger schools, UCLA, Oregon State. It was my previous institution, and have large bands, a lot of history and tradition. And so when I came here, seeing what our band is as good as any in the country, and I am 100% serious about that. They are so talented, they're so dedicated, they bring so much energy. They are as important to our success as anyone. And I think for students who come to Stony Brook, not necessarily knowing what to expect when they come to an event, our band, I just love them. I really, really love them, and I love the energy that they bring, and I cannot wait to see them back in action, because they're just like our athletes. They're so integral to our events, and they mean so much to our campus because they provide such spirit and energy across the board.
Music really can bring joy, right?
It does. It does.
Wow. I want to ask you a quick question about yoga and other forms of exercise that aren't, ordinarily named as a sport. How do you feel about those kind of things? It's interesting, as I guess sports have evolved, particularly over the last 10 years. There are new techniques that are brought in, and yoga has been one of them. So our athletes actually participate in yoga, from our football players to volleyball. We have incorporated yoga, and we've seen it really help from a flexibility standpoint, from a strengthening standpoint, and I think from a spiritual standpoint. So another area has been the introduction of performance nutrition, sleep science, all of these other areas. But just speaking strictly to yoga, I think from the professional level to college, and even in some high schools, yoga is an essential part of training, an essential part of preparing our athletes for success on the field. Do you think yoga is a sport? That's a good question. I don't know. I know, it's a weird one. But Pilates, that sort of thing. You're seeing sports like tumbling and acrobatics come into play.
there are new sports proposed to the NCAA all the time. So nothing would surprise me, but I think anything that brings out the competitive fire can be called a sport, certainly.
Speak a little bit about the nutrition aspect that has been brought in and the sleep.
Yeah, the nutrition piece is huge. I mean, we talk about it in terms of fuel, because you can eat, but is it the right food that our athletes need that can actually help fuel you? You know, all athletes have different body types and they have different needs. They need to gain weight. Do they need to gain muscle? Do they need to lose weight? And I think what they put in their body is tremendously important. And now what we know about nutrition, what we're able to learn and what we're able to ascertain is a key role. So just as lifting weights, we know it's going to add muscle and make you stronger. We know that eating the right food is going to prepare you for success. So we've had a great partnership here on campus with a couple of our educators on performance nutrition. We've done a lot of research. We have introduced a fueling station where athletes during the day, because they're on the go, they can get a healthy snack. And we've actually expanded that. And now we're looking at a partnership with Campus Dining to bring a training table aspect over at East Dining, which would allow our athletes, again, as part of their meal plan, to have specific performance-based food that will allow them to, again, be fueled and be ready for what they have to do for practice and for really a healthy lifestyle. Because what we found was our athletes, because they were on the go, they'd grab a burger and fries, and that really isn't what now, I understand they're going to have that from time to time, but on a regular basis, that's just not good for them. It does not allow for optimum performance.
That's fantastic. Is there a nutritionist for the athletic?
There is. So we work. We have two that we work with that are on staff here at Stony Brook. So we have a lot of great partnerships with other departments on campus, and that's one aspect of it. And then the sleep aspect also is, so when a team is traveling maybe to a different time zone, or when they're going on a long road trip, how do you maximize sleep? How do you plan schedules to ensure that they get to bed at the right time, they wake up at the right time? Our football team is playing at Oregon in September, so it's obviously a 3-hour time difference and a long trip. So we're looking at strategically, how can we use data? How can we use the sleep science and other aspects of nutrition to help us be as prepared as we possibly can?
It is so important that the athletic department is looking at those aspects, because I feel like with athletics, you think of the field, right? Or the basketball court, wherever it is. You don't think about the other parts of it that are so integral to those athletes.
Yeah, there's so much that goes into it. It's hard to describe to people. What people ask, what's a day like, or what do you do? And those are the things where you're trying to gain an edge, but you're really trying to provide for your athletes the best possible experience. And for us, we've come such a long way in the last few years, and we're looking to do things that don't add a whole lot of cost, but really provide tremendous value. And now with all the data and the technology that's available, heart rate monitors, that's another aspect of what we use. So we can measure if an athlete may be straining and the heart rate goes up, we have to pull them out or dial it back, because that is a really, really key indicator of health and also performance. So there's a lot of really cool wearable technology and other aspects that we utilize to make sure we're keeping our athletes safe and giving them the best chance to succeed. For
the fall, what advice do you give to your athletes and everybody looking forward in a positive way?
I'm a positive guy, Melanie, and I think our athletes would tell you I'm always positive, and it was hard this year to truly be positive, but we had to control what we could. Looking forward, let's come back and let's get back to what we love and give everything that we have and do this together. And I think there's a real sense of, let's represent Stony Brook the right way, and let's bring this back. I think we see a key role that we have in bringing our campus back together, to re-engaging the students, the faculty, and the staff, and creating excitement and energy. And I'll tell you right now, we have some football athletes and basketball athletes who are here throughout the summer. They're working out with just incredible energy and excitement, and I think everyone has a little spring in their step that, hey, we're coming back, we can't wait. And but I also think the role that we have to help facilitate renewed spirit and energy on this campus and in this community is exciting to all of us.
I'm very excited just listening to you.
It's going to be great. I just think it's across campus, even just with a lot of our programs that, were altered or unable to proceed during this year. I'm excited for all of our students and really just this campus when it's humming and when it's clicking on all cylinders. I would just say there's a real energy because I think all of us see the ascent and the trajectory of this incredible institution, and our collective energy this fall is going to be off the charts.
When is the first game?
So first football game is it's Thursday, September 2nd. So we moved it from a Saturday to a Thursday night. And, really we do that to try to get ahead of the Labor Day weekend, to get students here, to get them excited. And so it's going to be a lot of fun in Laval Stadium, playing New Hampshire. It's going to be fun. So Thursday, September 2nd.
So everyone should come.
Everyone needs to come. Wear red. Just be loud and just get ready to have fun.
Oh, thank you so much, Shawn.
Yes, of course.
I had a pleasure speaking with you, and it seems like the campus community is just revitalized.
Thanks, Melanie, and we're excited and just appreciate all the support from President McInnes and everyone on this campus pulling together. It's going to be an incredible semester and coming back strong, so I can't wait.
Thank you for listening. That's all we have for today. Hang in there and